Howdy, I'm Derek, and today I want to show you two powerful Excel functions worth adding to your arsenal, VSTACK and HSTACK. These are two dynamic array functions, commonly called DAFs, that can work with and output arrays of results rather than just calculate one cell value at a time. Whether you use DAFs like these by themselves or combined with others, what you can do with just one formula is pretty wild. In the comments below, there's a link to an article and free workbook that contains the wildest DAF formula I've ever made, and we'll actually look at that at the end of this video. Both VSTACK and HSTACK are extremely similar, and they can be very simple to use. So we're going to look at a few examples of each of them, and we'll end with that crazy one that combines them as well as many other custom functions. Let's start with a basic example of VSTACK. So take a look at what we're seeing here. We're really just stacking three very similarly structured sets of data. Right? So notice that if we go up here to the formula bar, you're really only required to put one array of values, whether those are cell ranges or just constant values. You can have up to 254 separate ones, but generally you're going to have, 2, 3, 4 or so of these. And notice that if we scroll down, it's just going to stack them vertically in one stack. That's why it's called VSTACK, right? So very simple. Now in the next example here, notice that we are giving them custom headers. So this is a good example where everything else is the same, but we've added one other set. So we have four of these. We have four different arrays. The first one has constant values. So if you're going to add your own custom headers or something else like that, put those in curly brackets. If it's text, wrap it in double quotes, and then separate anything with commas. Ideally, that matches the number of columns that you have within the other references. Okay? Again, very simple. Now, taking that stance, this is an example of just some of the data in a really helpful template I use to log my time when I'm doing consulting. You can also find that on my website. We'll put a link in the comments below. So this has a mix of hard-coded data as well as a formula. Okay, and let's say you wanted to clear that out. If you were to do this, somebody might say, oh, you just deleted your formula. Well, guess what? In this case, I haven't because I've embedded that formula in the header. Okay, so notice what we're doing here. We've got the hours as the very first reference here, so that's going to give us our header. And then everything below that is a dynamically adjusting or spilling range that's going to calculate based on what's below. So if we were to delete just some of these items, notice that the reference automatically, and here let's just not even select that column, it's going to automatically update that for us. Okay? So as you're adding data, basically this is saying in this formula, the bottom row in column C and column D is going to be used to show where the bottom of that calculation should be. Now, I'm going to undo some of the stuff I did so I don't lose out on some of that data, even though it's fake data. But the idea here is that by putting that formula here, one, it'll automatically update for all the new cells you have values in. And two, it won't be cleared whenever you clear all the data. So it makes it a lot easier to clear data. Very cool approach. Next example is very similar to the first one, but we're going to stack across sheets. Okay, so we've got three sheets, very similar, just different data. In this first one, it's a shortcut you might not have known you can do. You can put a colon between the sheet names and a colon between the range names, and any adjacent sheets are going to be included in that. So that's one approach where we can stack them. Notice these look exactly the same, these two sets. This other approach is just using them as separate arrays. So we're specifically using the same reference across each of those sheets. Both will do the same thing, but stacking across sheets, that's a pretty cool way to do this. Now, we're going to skip over and switch gears, go to HSTACK. Very, very similar approach, but instead of stacking vertically, we're stacking horizontally, which is why it's called HSTACK. So if you look at the references in this one, we're just stacking columns J to L, column O, and column R. That's all we're really doing here. We've got three different arrays. Again, you can have up to 254 of those. Pretty basic. Now, if we go to another example, this one, notice that I referenced row 28, but then 26 and 26, and it ends up with the NA value, very much like you might have seen with a VLOOKUP or something similar. Now, that's because those are not the same size. So it's going to fill it in with blanks because it's expecting to be something. Just wrap that with an if error or be very careful with your row references if you shouldn't have that, and you're good to go. Another really useful example of HSTACK is where you can add a calculation to every single value in the stack that's to the left. So in this example, I am referencing one that we just did on a different sheet. That's what the little hashtag means, is giving me the entirety of that array. And we're using a let function to define a variable. So grades is going to be the last column of that, so the column E here. And then we're going to use a switch statement to say, based on that, we want to assign a grade to every single one of those rows, those values. And we're able to do that and then stack that calculation on the right. HSTACK helps us do it. Very, very cool way to do it. Now there's other ways to do that, but this is one of the easier ways that I've found to do it. And then here's another one where you can apply kind of similar. We're gonna use the unique function. We're gonna use countifs, sumifs, and averageifs to basically give ourselves a little statistical summary, a lot like you'd see in a pivot table. So notice here's where we're doing that. We've got that whole array. We've got all the students. We've got all the scores, unique students using the unique function right there. And then we're stacking all that stuff together as we use those other functions. Another useful way to do that. And then lastly here just on HSTACK is applying lookups. So if you look at this, again, we're going to reference that, that array from before that gives us columns A through F, but then we want to add a couple based on lookups. So if you look at the lookup sheet over here, we're going to be grabbing columns B and D, and we just want to apply those. We're just going to append those and stack them to the right. Now again, if it didn't find a lookup, it's going to give you that NA value, or you can handle that with something like if error or if NA. But it allows us to stack these and be very specific with the columns we want to append. Pretty cool stuff. And now for the big boy, unpivoting. Now let's start with what the data looks like before. Okay, I'm gonna shorten up the formula bar here. So in this very colorful sheet, notice that we have a bunch of data and we have a bunch of repeating columns. Something you might see quite a bit if you're doing trend analysis, or sometimes reports spit out like this in some systems. It's kind of cool that you've got this horizontally. It's maybe easy to analyze, but that is a pain to do filtering and sorting and formulas. It makes it a lot more difficult than it should be. So ideally what we want to do is take that horizontally stacked data and make it vertically stacked. Now, it's not as easy as just saying VSTACK and move on, because we have repeating headers as rows and as columns above and to the right. So what we want to do is keep that in mind. We have 2 header rows, 2 columns to the left, and we want to unpivot that. Now, this is a custom lambda function, by far the craziest one I've ever built. Probably spent 10 or 12 hours on this total across a few days. And this is a result of it. You guys can benefit from it. So what we're saying here is let's reference that source data, so A through Z. How many header rows do we have above that data? 2. How many header columns do we have before it? 3. And then we can optionally, that's what those little brackets right there mean, we can provide the headers that should be applied to those new columns, because over here we're going to get these first 2 columns, but then we're going to append the unpivoted parts. So we're going to need to supply new headers for those, where you could just manually apply them or provide a reference or do whatever you want. Okay. Now behind this lambda function, I'm going to pull this over here from another screen. This is what it looks like. Lots of intense stuff. Let is amazing because you can apply those variables and reuse all that. Otherwise, without let, this would be probably 5 times bigger. And if you look in the middle, we've got the VSTACK portion that is going to stack the headers, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. We've also got HSTACK going to put things together, and then a whole bunch of other DAFs that are going to help us get just to the right data in just the right size. Now before DAFs, I have a macro that does this, basically a giant copy paste exercise. I've used that for a long time. That's great, but it's not dynamic. Because if this data updates in terms of the values, the number of columns, the number of rows, this is going to update automatically. Works really, really well. Power Query can do this too, but again, you'd have to update or refresh it and then build all that. This is a really easy formula you can plug in very quickly, and again, it's going to be dynamic. So there you go, a lot of really cool use cases for this. If you find yourself using the same formulas like these over and over again, consider building them into a custom lambda like I've done here, and keep a library. Maintain that so that you can easily copy and paste them, or do what I do. I've got a macro that will ingest them one or in a big group very quickly. Make sure to download this example file if you want to learn from these. That's also available with the article that accompanies this video, and a link in the comments. If you want to learn how these and all of the DAF functions work, check out the link below. And then lastly, check out the XLEV8 Excel add-in if you want to save a lot of time with shortcuts and bulk automation designed to save you over 200 hours a year with hundreds of tools. Just go to the app section at www.XLEV8.co or use a link in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, please give it a like, add a comment, tell us what you think, share or tag your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss out on other awesome tools, tips, and tricks. Thanks for watching, and have an excellent rest of your day.